at Readify, we had a lot of speakers and we had an extra ticket, so we sort of were sharing the ticket on different days. So I got to go on the first day, which was a Wednesday, and I go in, give them the ticket, and I say, yes, I am Salman Banali. I'm clearly from Bangladesh, as you can tell, but they let me in, and I got a cool jacket. And one of the talks there was a talk about mentoring junior developers. I don't know if anyone happened to be there or happened to be at this talk, but I have a few notes here, and I think some of the highlights that I got from that. One of them was being patient, which makes a lot of sense. As people are learning, we want to be patient. We want to let them fail, because that is something that teaches us a lot. We want to give them opportunities, and we also want to give them part of the answer, but maybe not the whole answer every time. And I'm wondering, is anyone here also that's someone who you might say you mentor junior developers every once in a while? That's awesome. What you're doing is incredibly important. I want to thank you for that. I found that if I wanted to add to this list of items, what might be some things for mentoring junior developers, some words or traits that you think would be really important as the mentor? Any thoughts? Just shout them out. What traits would you want to have as a mentor to junior developers? Patience. That's huge. Experience. Absolutely. We want to make sure we can share what we've learned with them. Anything else?
Empathy.
Empathy. That's a good one. Make sure we know what it's like to be in their shoes.
Passion.
Passion. That's another good one. Kind of giving them hopefully a bit of our passion for the things that we're doing. Any other last ideas?
Approachable.
Approachable. Yeah, you don't want to be that jerk who nobody wants to talk to. That's a really good one.
Best practices.
Best practices. That's a good one. I guess for me, what summarizes a lot of what you do as a mentor is in some way I am trying to take my wisdom, my knowledge, and my experience and transfer it to you, the mentee, in some way that it would help you grow. Does that sound like a fair summary as a mentor? As a short summary? If I could be a little pessimistic for a moment, what might be problematic with mentoring junior developers? How might we unintentionally harm their progress in growing and learning by being a mentor for them? Babying them. Could you just expand that?
When you tell them everything, tell them, here's how to avoid these mistakes. You don't need to tell them about mistakes. Tell them this is the way you do it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And let them,
Exactly.
don't make any problems.
That's a really good one. Any other things that we might unintentionally do as a mentor that could harm the mentee?
Finishing up redoing the work that they do.
I'm sorry, finishing
Up redoing the work that they do.
redoing the work that they do after they've done it. Yeah.
Rather than sort of sitting down with
Yeah.
them and working together towards a best solution.
Yep. Any other thoughts?
We always giving them the easy, crappy stuff because
Sort of the internship style. Give them go get the
stuff
coffee.
you don't want to do that might might not give them really good experience.
I think the one that I want to focus on, you're talking about babying, and I really liked that one because in some cases we can sort of create a dependency where we're giving them the answer and we're not helping them solve the problem on their own terms. Mentoring can be really gratifying, and if I may be a little cynical for a moment, sometimes it's kind of like, well, that's why I'm the senior developer. I can help solve that problem. It's very, it's very validating that I know something and it's valuable. It can sometimes be a little bit more about us than about them. And if I may be a little cynical to that, I'm a bit more of a teller. I'm helping them in very effective ways. I'm telling them my experience and helping them grow. But tonight I'm talking about coaching, and the reason I start with mentoring is because I want to go from telling you how to be a teller to being more of an asker. And I want to talk about why that is exceptionally effective with senior developers and how that can help you grow too. How would you mentor someone who is smarter than you? At Readify, I get to work with a bunch of senior developers, some of the smartest people I know in this country. Last Friday, I was talking to someone who is quite literally writing a book on Kubernetes. I can't walk up to him and give him some piece of advice, like he's gonna know that. How can I help him grow when I haven't been there before him, when I don't have experience in this field? I've done stuff with Docker. I haven't had to do so much that I even needed to orchestrate containers. And he's writing a book. How can I help? I can't do that as a mentor or as a teacher, but I can be a coach. Coaching is essentially a conversation with a goal of moving forward. I want to be the scrum master for your thought process. I'm not deciding what's in your backlog, what you're trying to achieve, or the order in which you want to achieve it, but I want to help you move the squares from the left to the right. And I can do that in such a way by going through frameworks of thought. And tonight I'm going to share with you one that I've sort of developed that I see as a common situation with a lot of our senior developers. And I'd like to do that with an example. With one of our senior developers who came to me and was talking a lot about how he got very stressed out speaking in front of groups of people. And if I were in teller mode, I could be very inspirational and I'd say, you can be anything, you're awesome. But instead, I want to encourage we start over here. The big difference between coaching and mentoring is in coaching, I believe you are smart enough to solve the problem on your own. If I can just ask the right questions to bring that out. So I am not going to give you advice at all. I'm going to try as hard as I can to never do it. And it's probably one of the hardest things when you're coaching people is to just shut up and listen. But with this developer, again, I'm going to believe that what he's feeling is real and true and that he is stressed out when he talks to people. And I want to know why. Why questions are difficult to ask, though, because they tend to make people a bit defensive. If I say, why did you do that? The implication is, I have an opinion of what you did, but I'm not going to tell you what it was. And we really don't want that. So I said, tell me more. And as we started to go through this conversation, I realized that because of his background, English is not his primary language. And he wants to improve his ability to speak in English in front of audiences, which is a situation I've never been in because I was born into this language. So I can't just say, oh, go read a book. So I asked him, what about it in particular is so frightening? And he said he was worried that people in the audience would think less of him because he was unable to articulate what he wanted to say in the way he wanted to say it, in English. A teller me would have said that's not true. They're a friendly audience. We wanted to go to one of our internal things we call bar camp, where people go up and practice speaking. They're going to be there. But instead, I'm really trying not to say that because I believe what he's saying is true, and I need to ask questions to see if I can lead him on a path that will take him somewhere a bit better. So I said, what would happen if you were in the audience and someone like you went up and talked? What would you think of them? And he said, I would understand that they're trying to learn English and they're trying to improve. And I said, do you think it's possible that other people might feel exactly the same way? And that was one small example where we can take someone's fear, shake it a little bit and say, hey, if we just looked at this in a different way, maybe this isn't as big of a blocker as you might think. And then we start to talk about next steps. We start to talk about what are our options. How can we help improve your speaking ability without putting you out in front of anyone in like an NDC. This is sort of going through a framework. The common one in coaching is called GROW, which is an acronym. It's goal, reality, options, and way forward. So the first one, G, what is your goal, essentially? What are you trying to achieve? The second one is the reality. What's standing in your way of achieving that goal? What's happening? 3 is options. What are some opportunities? What are some things we could do if you had unlimited time and money? If this problem over here wasn't a problem, how might that change? If you were the boss? Questions like that, just to get us thinking about the problem in different ways. And then the last one is way forward, W, which is now that we have decided on something, how are we going to take one step in the right direction? I went over that a little quickly because I want to talk about a framework that I've worked with recently that focuses more on not goals but problems. A lot of the time when a senior developer has come to me, they have a really complicated problem. And it's not about an Angular directive that isn't working right. It's fundamentally, how can I convince this group of people to build the architecture in this way because I feel that it's right. There's something that's bigger than that. And if I try to base it off of my own personal experience and knowledge, that's only going to get me so far, and I'm going to start creating a dependence on that person to come to me for advice. And I don't want to do that because I believe that they are smart enough to solve it on their own. That might not be true, but that is where I'm going to start. And these big problems, I think of them as really big knots that are all stuck together, and I can't just do a quick Stack Overflow answer that you can pull out one string and whoop, it's all good. And so the acronym I use is KNOTS with a K. And the first letter, K, is for know the problem. So some questions I might ask are like, just what's on your mind? Let's have a conversation. If someone is struggling with something, you just need to sit down and say, tell me what's up. Because it's almost always right on the surface. I've never met someone, introverts included, that isn't just ready to sort of explode on what's going on in their life once they're in an environment that they feel comfortable doing it. So we need to make sure that we're listening with our whole body and paying attention to what's going on in their lives. Not just listening to what they're saying, but also how they're saying it. Because the problem they're telling you might not really be the problem. It could just be that they're having a hard week and they need someone to listen. So with K, know the problem. I want to start and leave the floor open, but hopefully create a space where they feel comfortable telling me things. So what's going on? Maybe it's what makes this problem so hard? Because what I don't want to say is, why is this a problem? Because again, we're going back to why questions. I'm assuming and kind of implying that it isn't. I believe it's a problem. Help me understand why it's a problem. So I like what makes this problem so tough as an example of being able to sort of encourage that. Why is this problem so hard? This is sort of like the advanced rubber duck stage, where it's I'm just a rubber duck that's talking back to you. I'm not trying to solve the problem. I'm not trying to discuss options. I just want you to tell me more about it. To be very effective in this first part, I need to know how to listen and also how to be quiet. We all have different paces in the way we speak. Some people talk really, really fast, and if you pause just for a moment, they'll sort of leap in to the conversation. We really don't want to do that. And it's taken me a lot of practice to just sit and be quiet and wait for a little while. Because the truth comes out in the silence. If you give them just a moment to think, they're maybe just thinking about the next step. And if this is a complex problem, it may be the first time they're actually saying what the problem is out loud. And that can be such an incredible experience just to talk about what you're going through. The second one is N. So we've talked about the problem for a while. And now I'm going to needle the problem. And needling for me is when you have a really big knot, you can't just start trying to untangle it. You sort of pick on the edges and make it bigger, but looser. And this is sort of the idea here. I want to reframe the way you're looking at the problem a lot. I'm not trying to solve it, but I just want you to think about it in a different way. So one question is trying to answer, why is this a problem? what does this problem look like to us? If you were your teammate, how would they see this problem? With the case of the senior developer who was struggling to talk in front of an audience, I asked if you were in the audience looking up, what would you think? Prove to me that this is a problem. So again, we're still not trying to solve it, but we're trying to look at it in a different way. At this point, the person might solve it on their own. It's really common. They'll suddenly realize, oh, you know what? Maybe this isn't as big a problem as I thought, or thinking about it this way, they've solved it on their own, which is great. It's really important to ask smart questions that are evocative of new thoughts in this point. The third letter, O, is the same as grow. This is options. One of the stupidest questions I've ever asked to someone that actually worked was they answered, I asked, oh, what else could you do about it? And they said, I don't know. And the truth is, that's way higher. It's very intimate in the darkness. We're in options. I was saying the truth is, we're talking about someone who said, I don't know. The truth is that I've found about 8 times out of 10, when someone says, I don't know, it rarely means that they don't actually know. So a good question when someone says, I don't know, is, what don't you know? What it specifically is getting in your way. Sometimes it's just a small piece of the problem, and you can say, oh, I can help you with that, but you can still do this whole thing if I help you with this piece. Can I help you there? So it's really valuable when someone says, I don't know. That's one where make sure they prove it to you if they really don't know. Because we're still in asker mode. And I don't want to tell you the answer. It's really easy to step over here. If they really don't know, we can take a step back and start explaining. But I really don't want to do that if I can. So the question I asked that was so stupid is I know you don't know. But if you did, what would you do? And they actually answered the question. And they came up with something that kind of would work. It's amazing how much we can sort of stop ourselves because we focused on a specific way to solve the problem, and we've decided we can't do that way, so we can't solve the problem. But we've been needling it for a while and looking at it from different directions, and there are always new ways to solve it. So, questions. At this point, I'm also restating exactly what they've told me back to them. So if they've told me their problem, I'm effectively saying it right back to them. So many of the problems I think you face in your own lives, you're smart enough to solve. It's just really hard to do it when it's happening to you. So if I could for a moment pull it out of you and set it right here and say, hey, what would you say if this person was struggling with this problem? You would be able to give them advice and say, oh, that sounds good. Maybe you could do that. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to change and needle and reframe this problem as often as I can. The next letter is T, which is test. As we've had this conversation, sometimes it takes a bit of a tangent and we start solving a different problem than the one we started with. Testing is a way to make sure that I didn't get off track in that conversation. So if we did whatever you propose, would it fix the problem? It's a very obvious question, but it's an important one to ask. It's like, I like that idea, it sounds great. If you did that, would it fix the problem? And sometimes it's like, oh, not really. And so, okay, let's go back and sort of work forward from there. Because it's helpful to make sure that we're taking meaningful steps that actually solve whatever problem they started with. Or we've discovered that the problem they started with is not really the problem, it's actually this. The other question I like to ask is, how will you know if you solved the problem? Something you're struggling with or something you want to achieve, how will you know when you've made it? What will that look like? What does success look like? If we start trying to solve a problem without knowing where we're going, it's hard to know when we're done. It's like building a software project and not really knowing what you're trying to create. The last letter is S. and I didn't write down what S means, sorry. It's set up next steps, which is similar to way forward. When we, in the same way when we're building software, we want to start with an MVP, but even that, we start with our first story. How much can I break this down into individual deliverables? In the same way, when we're trying to help someone solve a big problem, I want to nail down what's something you can do right now to start moving forward to solve this problem. I know it might be monumental to solve everything, but what's something we can start with? A lot of big problems, if you hurt your ankle, you start walking weird, and then your hip starts to hurt, and then you start doing something weird, and then your shoulder starts to hurt. It's like, oh man, my shoulder really hurts, I hate this. So you try to fix this. But if we can start with something small, sometimes other things start to fix themselves and it gets easier. So it's really important to start with something and start making progress. The other question I ask is, do you have what you need to get started? So this is a question of where can I provide support to help you get there? Remember, as a coach, I'm not trying to solve your problem because I think you can do it. But if I can help you solve the problem in some way, I'm not going to do the work for you. But if I can put you in the room with someone, or if I can give you something that you need, I'd be happy to help out a little bit. Or in figuring out what you need to solve the problem. So that's not, what I really love about asking questions like this is I'm no longer limited to being able to help people that I have the experience and knowledge and wisdom to help. I can help people who are in completely different seasons of life or different jobs, because I'm not actually trying to tell you how to write code or anything. I don't need to know your field of expertise. I just need to know how to ask good questions and how to listen and to help push the conversation forward. I was at a company in here called OFX, which is an international foreign trading company, and I happened to get coffee with the CTO. And she started talking to me about a problem they had in the hierarchy structure of the company, because it was on her mind. And there is no way that I can give this woman advice, okay? You know, she used to work at Google, right? She's the CTO of a big company. She is intelligent, and this is a hard problem to solve. So I sat there and I just started asking questions. Tell me about the problem. And I started needling a little bit. How could we maybe look at this in a different way? She figured it out on her own after 10 minutes and walked away, and she thought I was a genius. I didn't say a thing. It won't make you look stupid if you don't have the answer. Being able to ask good questions, to be able to sit there and listen, means a tremendous amount to people, to know that they're heard. If I'm a mentor and I'm giving you the answer, even if I mean it well, I'm also creating an environment where the only way you can have a different idea is to counter me. And that's kind of intimidating sometimes. If I'm not giving you any advice, then it's a lot easier for you to think about, how do I solve this problem? And then the next time, you've already done it before, so we can start to grow and think about, how do we solve these problems? And instead of creating dependence, I'm creating independence, where they don't need me around anymore. I'm a consultant, that's what I do professionally. I go into a company, try to fix whatever's going on, and then hopefully set it up so I don't need to be there anymore. It's always temporary. And it allows me to grow too, because I can coach people who can teach me stuff. When you're going through and knowing the problem and needling the problem, you'll probably come up with ideas on ways you could solve it. And a lot of the time you'll probably be right, but not always. And they'll come up with ideas that'll surprise you, even junior devs. And it's really awesome to be on that side of the fence, to be able to help someone and learn in the process. And I guess I want to end this by saying that everyone in the room is capable of doing this. And it is incredibly valuable, not just for you, but for all the people you talk to for this. And so I'd like to encourage you to go and try talking to people and listening to what their problems are, and being at least the advanced version of a rubber duck. Because it's incredible to see what happens when you give someone an opportunity for them to talk to you about their problems, and you won't try to solve it. You're just there to listen and ask good questions. One person I was talking to broke down into tears because nobody had given them the opportunity to speak out before. They had always been told what to do in a very kind way, and to help them grow, absolutely it was great, but they had never had the opportunity to pitch the idea first, and it meant a tremendous amount to them. So I really hope that you take an opportunity sometime this week, when you have a chance to give someone the answer or to help them grow, maybe take a step back and just ask questions to understand the problem that they're going through. Because I'm sure they're so close to figuring it out, they're just a little behind you. And if you give them an opportunity to catch up, they're going to grow so much faster. And it's going to be great for you and your team. Thank you.